Understanding Issues and Limitations with Forms, Section 4. In this section, we focus our attention on web forms, mainly on issues and limitations with input bindings. Forgetting to declare initial values. In this video, we'll take a closer look at why declaring initial values in the source is required and recommended when using web forms. The Vue model directive is used for two-way data bindings on form input elements, such as the input, select, and text area. And one thing you should be aware of is that if you set default values to the value, the checked, or the selected attributes, the Vue model directive does not recognize them and therefore will completely ignore the values entirely. So if you are familiar with Angular, this is exactly the same way. And the reason why is because the source of truth, the raw data for Vue, will always be that Vue instance data. It's that data property that is created inside the component, and which is why the directive will ignore these values entirely. So let's see an example of this Vue directive. Okay, so here in the application, I'm going to open the components here, and maybe we'll use the we can try to log in. Okay, and I'm going to see what it looks like in the view. So here the login page, well, I'm going to modify this a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to remove these two down here so we can do some example here. I'm going to move the users, remove that, so we don't have to do that again. Okay, so I'm going to create, I'm going to just modify one of these tags here, maybe the email address field, which is this line 6 right here. Okay, so you notice that this is the input and there is no default values. Now, if I were to put the default value, I could put it here. I would just say value is equal to a current default value. I could put my email address, just the full default, for example. And sometimes you do that because maybe it's for whatever reason. So if I save that, and in the view, and you see that it's pre-populated for me, right? So it's part of that value. And to really see that it works, okay, I'm gonna also show the output here on the right side. Maybe we'll do that, or maybe we'll even look at the console and see if it's there. Okay, but I think we can just show it on the right side and see that it is not recognized by the Vue instance. So this is the value here. What that means is that if I issue this Vue model, okay, Vue model equals something, I can call this email, okay, and then this is a variable I need to set inside the source. So I'm going to go down here, and I don't have the data here, so I'm going to add here. It's a function. I want to put a comma before I forget. And so it's going to return an object, right, of properties. And it's going to be email. And if I leave it blank, like that, let me save it. Okay, so you notice that it removes that initial value I had set earlier, right? So it ignores the value attribute entirely. If I press the F12 key, if you view the console, and we're going to explore the elements here of the DOM, and I'm going to move out a little bit so you can see. Okay, so inside this tag, in the form, the email, right, you see that right here, this part right here, this is a default value. Okay, it's there. And it doesn't have any conflict with the other directive. It's just completely ignored by the Vue directive. So when you put Vue model into this tag, as a part of this tag, that value attribute is completely ignored, and there's no data coming to the model. Okay, so that is one thing. The other one is the select. If I were to put select, let's just say, well, let's do the checked first. check will be like a checkbox, and this is a checkbox here. So same thing, right? The value is remember me, okay? And the check will be either set to true or false. So if you put checked here, that means by default it will checked. It will be checked, right? If I save this, go here, and you see that it's been checked, okay? And we can test the true to false value of that. So right over here, I could probably put a message over here, and we'll just put like something like that so we know. And I'll put a value variable checked here. I'm going to create, maybe I'll call it is checked. Okay, is checked. And this is checked is going to be bound to the vModel. So if I put vModel here, that is going to be bound to a variable called is checked, but really this is checked is just the default of this check here. Again, this check it will be completely ignored now because now I have the vModel bind to it. And then in the data, I'm going to add here is checked. And all it is just a Boolean value. So if I set it to false, okay, you notice that I put false. The default is checked, right? You force that to be checked. We just show that. Now if I save this and view in the source and the view, you see that it's now false, right? It's completely ignored, even though we explicitly specify that inside the code in the template. It says checked. Where to put it? Yeah, it's in here. So we force it checked here. We put that checked here, and it's completely ignored. So right here, this is the default that we set. But even though it's true, it's overridden by Vue's variable. Okay. So the last thing I want to show you is that select. So let's just say we're going to put a div right below here. We'll put a class, maybe like MT4 or 5. MT means like margin top, margin bottom. So margin bottom and top. So we give us some room. Again, that's for a bootstrap. Okay, so right in here, I'm going to put the select element, and we're just going to select like maybe two data, right? So if I make it selected, well, let's build that first. Okay, I'm going to have just two options, and the first option will be at the value of A, and we just put here like plan A, and then I'm going to copy this and paste it below here for the second value. Just put plan B. I'm going to do one more, plan C, that's fine. Okay, so we have 3 plans, and now if I save this in the view, and it shows that there are no, by default it's selected the first one, right? Okay, now back in the code, if I want to force to select plan C, so you just put selected here, right? It's regular HTML and CSS and stuff. If I save that, if I go back here, you see that it should be selected for C by default. Okay, again, just to show that I put A here, I'm going to refresh the browser, and that should be selected plan C. Okay, that is the default value. I'm going to bind this with the vModel directive. I'm going to bind this with the vModel directive. So right here, it's just the default, but when you select it, you're going to put up here in the select tag. So I'm going to say vModel equals, again, is selected. Okay, and again, I'm going to go down here and create another variable, because all this again just another Boolean. If I put not Boolean but a value in one of those options, right, like A, B, or C. If I put here a B, okay, so it's going to override the default here, which was supposed to be C, but because now I bound with the vModel, this is completely ignored. So let's save that. So you can see that it jumps to B. And again, if I put A here, refresh, and it goes to plan B, even though we set C to be the default.